My army homecoming was perfect, until a stranger called my husband Dad. My name is Harper Bennett, and I was a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army. People always thanked me for my service. They called me brave, strong, fearless. But no amount of military training could prepare me for what happened the day I came home. After 11 months overseas, I stepped off the plane expecting balloons, hugs, and the family I dreamed about every single night. My husband, Wyatt Hayes, stood behind the welcome barrier holding flowers. Beside him was our 8-year-old son, Noah. For one perfect moment, everything felt exactly the way I'd imagined. Noah ran into my arms so hard that we both almost fell over. "I missed you so much, Mom." I couldn't stop crying. Wyatt kissed my forehead and whispered, "Welcome home, soldier." The drive back felt peaceful. They told me stories about school, birthdays, and how Noah had learned to play baseball while I was away. I almost believed life had stayed frozen without me. Then we stopped at a gas station 20 minutes from home. Wyatt went inside to pay. I stayed outside with Noah. That's when a silver SUV pulled up beside us. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, jumped out laughing. The moment she saw Wyatt walking back outside, she sprinted toward him. "Daddy!" She wrapped both arms around his legs. Wyatt's face turned completely white. The woman climbing out of the SUV looked just as shocked to see me standing there in uniform. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The little girl looked at me, smiled innocently, and said, "Are you Daddy's friend from work?" My heart stopped. Wyatt quickly pulled the girl away. "You've got the wrong person," he said. But the woman didn't move. Instead, she stared directly into my eyes and quietly whispered, "He never told you about us, did he?" In combat, I had learned to spot danger in seconds. The look on Wyatt's face told me one thing. Someone was lying, and I was about to find out who. The drive home after the gas station felt colder than any night I'd spent overseas. Wyatt kept talking like nothing had happened. The cashier was slow. That family must have mistaken me for someone else. They were probably embarrassed. His excuses came too quickly, too smoothly. I simply looked out the window. Years in the Army had taught me one lesson. People who tell the truth don't usually rush to explain it. When we got home, Wyatt carried my bags inside while I tucked Noah into bed. As I kissed his forehead, he grabbed my sleeve. "Mom!" His voice barely rose above a whisper. "Please don't be mad at Dad." I felt my stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" Noah looked toward the hallway to make sure no one was listening. "Sometimes, a little girl comes here." Every muscle in my body went stiff. "How many times?" "I don't know." "Does she stay long?" He nodded. "Sometimes she sleeps here." My heartbeat echoed in my ears. "Does Dad tell you not to talk about her?" Noah looked down at the floor. "He says it's a grown-up secret." I hugged him tightly. "It isn't your fault, sweetheart." After Noah fell asleep, I quietly walked downstairs. Wyatt was sitting on the couch watching television like it was an ordinary evening. I sat beside him. "Who was that little girl?" He didn't even look at me. "I already told you. They had the wrong person." I stared at him. "Look me in the eyes and say that." He finally turned. "I have never seen that child before." Without another word, I stood up and went to our bedroom. Not because I believed him, because I knew arguing wouldn't reveal the truth. Evidence would. The next morning, Wyatt left early for work. The moment his truck disappeared down the street, I unlocked his home office. Most of the drawers held boring paperwork. Insurance forms, utility bills, old tax documents. Then I noticed one drawer was locked. Wyatt had never locked anything from me before. That alone told me it mattered. I searched the room until I found a spare key taped beneath the desk. My hands trembled as the lock clicked open. Inside was a thick envelope. Across the front, in neat handwriting, were 4 words. "For Ava's future." Ava, the little girl's name. Beneath the envelope lay dozens of photographs. Holding the same little girl. At birthday parties. At the zoo. On a beach. Christmas morning. The date stretched back nearly 5 years. 5 years. My vision blurred. This wasn't one mistake. This was a second life. Then my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. I answered. A woman's calm voice said, "If you've opened that drawer, it's time we finally met." Then the line went dead and I stared at my phone long after the call ended. My first instinct was to call Wyatt. My second instinct, the one the Army had drilled into me for years, was stronger. Stay calm. Gather facts. Never confront someone until you know the whole picture. 10 minutes later, another message appeared. It contained only an address. No name. No explanation. I drove there anyway. The address led to a small coffee shop on the edge of town. A woman in her early 30s stood as soon as I walked in. She looked nervous. Not guilty. She quietly asked, "Harper?" I nodded. "I'm Elena Brooks." She glanced around before sitting back down. "I've been waiting a long time to meet you." I didn't touch the coffee she'd ordered for me. "Start talking." She took a deep breath. "I found out about you 3 years ago." My jaw tightened. "What do you mean?" "I didn't know Wyatt was married when we met." I stared at her without blinking. She slid a photo across the table. It showed Wyatt wearing no wedding ring. His arm was around Elena. A newborn baby rested between them. The date on the picture was nearly 5 years old. "He told me he was divorced," Elena said quietly. "When did you learn the truth?" "The day I found one of your military family photos in his truck." "Why didn't you contact me?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I tried." She pulled out her phone and showed me old emails. Messages. Screenshots. Every single one had been sent to an email address that looked almost identical to mine, except for one missing letter. Wyatt had given her a fake address. "He made sure we'd never find each other," she whispered. I leaned back in my chair, trying to make sense of everything. "So, Ava is his daughter." Elena nodded. "Yes." I closed my eyes for a moment. The betrayal hurt. But what hurt even more was realizing that an innocent little girl had been caught in Wyatt's lies. Just then, Elena reached into her purse one last time. "I haven't shown this to anyone." She placed a folded document on the table. It was a birth certificate. Father Wyatt Hayes. Mother Elena Brooks. There was no denying it anymore. Wyatt had built 2 families at the same time. Before I could speak, Elena said something that completely changed everything. "Harper, I'm not here because I want Wyatt." She looked directly into my eyes. "I'm here because someone is trying to kill him." The words hit me like an explosion. "What?" She leaned closer and lowered her voice. 3 nights ago, Wyatt showed up at my house terrified. He said he'd made a mistake at work, and if anything happened to him, neither of our families would be safe. For the first time since coming home, I realized this story wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about a secret far more dangerous than either of us had imagined. Harper. That's the name Wyatt had whispered before leaving my life in pieces. But now, that same name echoed in my mind for a different reason. Someone wanted him dead. I studied Elena's face. She wasn't acting. She was scared. "What kind of mistake?" I asked. Elena shook her head. "He wouldn't tell me. He just kept saying, 'If anyone asks about me, say you haven't seen me.'" I frowned. "Did he leave you anything?" She reached into her purse again and placed a small flash drive on the table. "He begged me to keep this safe. I never opened it. I thought, maybe you should." I slipped the flash drive into my pocket. "If you're telling the truth, we're both in danger." Before Elena could answer, her phone buzzed. Her face lost all color. "It's Wyatt." She answered on speaker. His voice was shaky. "Elena, don't go home." "Why?" "They've already been there." The call suddenly filled with loud crashing noises. Then, silence. The line went dead. Elena's hands started trembling. "We have to find him." We rushed outside. But the parking space where Wyatt's truck should have been was empty. I drove straight to Elena's house. The front door was hanging open. The living room looked like a tornado had ripped through it. Drawers had been pulled out. Pictures were smashed. Someone had searched every inch of the house, but they hadn't found what they were looking for. The flash drive. I kept it hidden inside my jacket. As we searched the house, I noticed muddy boot prints leading toward the backyard. Army instincts kicked in immediately. "Stay behind me." I slowly followed the footprints. Behind the shed, I found something that made my blood run cold. Wyatt's wallet, his phone, and a single Army challenge coin I had given him before my deployment. Taped to it was a handwritten note. Open the drive, and you're next. This wasn't a jealous affair. This wasn't just a double life anymore. Someone knew exactly who I was. And somehow, they knew I had the evidence they were desperately trying to destroy. My military training told me to leave the house immediately. But my instincts told me something even more important. The people chasing Wyatt wanted the flash drive. That meant whatever was on it was worth risking everything for. I drove Elena and Ava to a small motel nearly 40 miles away and checked them in under Elena's maiden name. If anyone asks, I said, you've never met me. Elena nodded without arguing. She finally understood how serious this had become. As soon as they were safe, I drove to my older brother Cole Bennett's house. Cole had retired from Army intelligence 5 years earlier. If anyone could help me figure this out, it was him. He opened the door, took one look at my face and said, "What happened?" I didn't answer. I simply placed the flash drive in his hand. 20 minutes later, we were sitting in his office while the files loaded onto his computer. There were dozens of folders. Most contained financial records, shipping schedules, security reports. Nothing unusual. Then Cole opened a folder named Insurance. Inside wasn't insurance paperwork. It was video. The footage came from warehouse security cameras. The timestamp was only 12 days old. A truck backed into a loading dock. Several men unloaded large wooden crates. One crate broke open. Instead of machine parts, bundles of cash spilled across the floor. Millions of dollars. Then another clip started. This time Wyatt appeared on screen. He wasn't helping them. He was secretly recording everything with his phone. Cole paused the video. He was collecting evidence. So he wasn't working with them? Cole slowly shook his head. No. He was preparing to expose them. Another file contained scanned passports, fake identities, bank transfers. The deeper we looked, the worse it became. This wasn't a small crime. It was a nationwide smuggling network. Wyatt had accidentally discovered it while managing military supply contracts for a private defense company. He had copied everything. And now, those people believed he had shared the evidence with me. Cole leaned back in his chair. You need to call the FBI. Before I could answer, his security cameras flashed on the monitor. A black SUV had stopped outside the house. Then another. Then a third. 4 armed men stepped out. One of them looked directly into the camera, smiled, and held up a photograph. It was a picture of me. Cole immediately turned off every light in the house. They found us. A second later, the front window exploded inward. Someone shouted from outside, "Bring us the drive, and maybe your family survives." Glass shattered across the living room. Cole grabbed my arm and pulled me behind a concrete support wall. Basement. Now. The men outside expected panic. Instead, they found an empty living room. Cole had designed the house with a hidden escape route years earlier. As we moved through the narrow passage, he whispered, "Call 911?" I shook my head. No. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. If this network reaches military contractors, we don't know who we can trust yet. He didn't argue. He knew I was right. We emerged behind an abandoned workshop nearly 2 blocks away. Only then did I finally breathe. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered without speaking. A familiar voice whispered, "Harper." "It's me. Wyatt." He sounded exhausted. "I don't have much time." "Where are you?" I asked. "I can't tell you. They're tracking every phone I use." I clenched my jaw. "You lied to me for 5 years." "I know. You had another daughter." Silence. Then a broken voice answered, "I deserve your hatred, but Ava and Noah don't deserve what's coming." I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" His breathing grew heavier. "Because the day I found out Elena was pregnant, I tried to end everything." "What?" I confessed I was married. She left immediately. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. Months later, I learned Ava had been born. I supported her financially, but I was too ashamed to tell you. Every lie had buried him deeper. Then he said something I never expected. The smuggling network found out about Ava. They threatened to kill her if I spoke to the authorities. So I pretended to work with them while secretly collecting evidence. Tears filled my eyes, not because I forgave him, because I finally understood how complicated the truth had become. Before I could say another word, Wyatt spoke quickly. The drive isn't complete. What do you mean? There's one last piece of evidence. Where? He answered with 3 words. Our old cabin. The line went dead. Cole stared at me. The cabin by Black Pine Lake? I nodded. No one had been there in years. If Wyatt was telling the truth, the final evidence was hidden there. But if the smugglers had intercepted the call, they were already on their way. By sunset, Cole and I reached the cabin. The front door was unlocked. Inside, everything looked untouched. Until I noticed muddy footprints leading downstairs. Someone was already there. I raised my flashlight. A figure slowly stepped out of the darkness, holding a rifle. Then the stranger spoke. Harper Bennett? I've been waiting for you. And when the light finally reached his face, I recognized him. He was Wyatt's commanding officer. For a second I couldn't move. Colonel Adrian Mercer. The man standing in front of me had pinned medals on my uniform 2 years earlier. He had a flawless reputation. Decorated. Respected. Trusted. Seeing him in an abandoned cabin with a rifle made no sense. Cole slowly stepped in front of me. Put the weapon down, Colonel. Mercer didn't raise the rifle. He carefully leaned it against the wall and lifted both hands. I'm not your enemy. I'd heard those words before. Too many times. Then explain why you're here. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a sealed envelope. Wyatt asked me to give you this. If he disappeared. My heart pounded as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Harper, if you're reading this, I've probably run out of time. I know there's no excuse for what I did. I betrayed your trust. I broke our family. You may never forgive me, and you have every right not to. But there's one truth you deserve to know. The day I discovered the smuggling network, I reported it through official channels. 3 days later, every person I reported it to was either transferred or suddenly stopped returning my calls. That's when I realized the corruption went much higher than I imagined. I couldn't trust anyone, not even people in uniform. The only person I still trusted was Colonel Mercer. The final evidence is hidden beneath the old fireplace. Don't let them destroy it. Protect Noah. Protect Ava. No matter what happens to me. Wyatt. Cole immediately walked to the stone fireplace. One loose brick stood out from the others. He pulled it free. Behind it was a waterproof metal box. Inside were hard drives, signed contracts, and a black notebook filled with names, dates, and payment records. Mercer looked relieved. Thank God. Before anyone could speak again, the sound of tires echoed outside. Not one vehicle. Several. Headlights flooded the cabin windows. Mercer's expression changed instantly. They found us. He grabbed his radio. No time. He looked straight at me. Take the evidence and leave through the tunnel behind the fireplace. Tunnel? I asked. This cabin was built during the Cold War. There's an escape route. The front door exploded inward before he could finish. Armed men poured into the cabin. Mercer fired the first shot, not at us, but at the attackers. Geo! He shouted. Cole shoved the metal box into my backpack. We crawled into the narrow tunnel as bullets echoed through the cabin above us. Just before I disappeared into the darkness, I looked back. Colonel Mercer was standing alone in the middle of the room, buying us time. Then I heard someone outside yell a name that froze my blood. Don't let Director Kane lose that evidence. Director Kane, the head of the very federal task force that was supposed to stop the smuggling network. If his name was involved, this conspiracy was far bigger than any of us had imagined. The tunnel was barely wide enough to crawl through. Cold dirt scraped against my arms as Cole pushed the metal evidence box ahead of us. Behind us, gunfire echoed through the cabin. Then, silence. I didn't know whether Colonel Mercer was alive, but I knew one thing. He had sacrificed himself to give us a chance. The tunnel opened nearly 300 yards away in a dense forest. We hurried toward Cole's truck. Just as I reached for the door handle, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then a text appeared. Wyatt is alive. Come alone if you want to see him. A GPS location followed. Cole looked over my shoulder. It's a trap. I know. But if Wyatt's alive, he may know who Director Kane is really working for. After a long silence, Cole nodded. We do this my way. Instead of driving straight to the location, we stopped on a ridge overlooking an abandoned freight yard. Using military binoculars, I scanned the area. 3 black SUVs. At least a dozen armed men. Snipers on 2 rooftops. Definitely a trap. Then I saw something that stole the air from my lungs. Wyatt. He was tied to a steel chair inside one of the warehouses. Bruised. Blood running down the side of his face. But alive. Standing beside him was a tall man in an expensive black suit. No uniform. No badge. Just confidence. Cole quietly whispered. That's Kane. So he's real. Before I could answer, another vehicle pulled into the yard. The driver stepped out. It wasn't one of Kane's men. It was FBI Special Agent Nora Ellis. She walked straight toward Kane. For one terrible second I thought she had betrayed us too. Then without warning, she punched Kane square in the face. The warehouse exploded into chaos. FBI agents hidden around the freight yard rushed in from every direction. FBI, drop your weapons. Gunfire erupted. Kane's men scattered. Cole looked at me. Before he could reach for another weapon, FBI agents surrounded him. It's over. Agent Nora Ellis shouted. Kane smiled. It wasn't the smile of a man who had lost. It was the smile of someone who still had one last secret. You think this ends with me? He laughed. There are people above me. Nora knelt beside him and snapped handcuffs around his wrists. Then you'll tell us who they are. Kane looked straight at me. No. Harper will. I frowned. What are you talking about? Kane laughed again. The notebook. I immediately opened the metal evidence box. The black notebook was gone. Every hard drive was still there. Every document was still there. But the notebook, the one containing names and payments, had disappeared. Cole stared at the empty space. That's impossible. Only 4 people had touched the box. Me, Cole, Colonel Mercer, and Wyatt. I slowly turned toward my husband. He looked just as confused as I was. I didn't take it. Before anyone could speak, Agent Nora received a radio call. Her face changed instantly. What? She listened for several more seconds before lowering the radio. Colonel Mercer is alive. Relief flooded through me. Then Nora finished the sentence. And he's disappeared. Silence filled the warehouse. Mercer had vanished, along with the notebook that could expose everyone involved. Hours later, after giving our statements, I walked into the hospital room where Wyatt was being treated. His injuries weren't life-threatening. For the first time in years, there were no lies left between us. I don't expect forgiveness, he said quietly. You shouldn't. I know. He looked down at the hospital blanket. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn back Noah's trust. And Ava's. I didn't answer. Some wounds don't heal overnight. Some never heal at all. Just then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. There was only one photo. Colonel Mercer. Alive. Standing in front of a cabin deep in the mountains. Beneath the photo were 6 chilling words. The notebook stays buried with me. No signature. No explanation. Just the location. And a choice that would change everything one final time. 3 days later, I drove alone to the mountain cabin. The FBI wanted to send a team. Cole wanted to come with me. I refused them both. If Colonel Adrian Mercer truly had the notebook, I needed to hear his reasons before anyone else did. The cabin sat at the edge of a frozen lake, hidden beneath towering pine trees. When I stepped onto the porch, the front door slowly opened. Mercer looked older than I remembered. The gunshot during the attack had torn through his shoulder, and his arm rested in a sling. He didn't point a weapon at me. He simply said, I knew you'd come. Inside, the notebook rested on a wooden table, untouched. I could have handed this to the FBI, Mercer said quietly. But if I had, dozens of powerful people would have disappeared before they were arrested. We needed time to build an airtight case. I stared at him. So you've been working with Agent Nora? He nodded. For months. The notebook had never been stolen. It had been protected. Within the next 6 weeks, Federal investigators quietly arrested executives, contractors, accountants, and corrupt officials connected to the smuggling network. Director Kane agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony exposed the entire operation. For the first time in years, the truth finally won. A month later, Wyatt pleaded guilty to hiding evidence and lying to investigators. The judge also recognized that he had secretly gathered the evidence that ultimately dismantled the criminal network. He received a prison sentence. When the hearing ended, he turned toward me. "I don't deserve another chance." I looked at him for a long moment. "No, you don't. But our children deserve parents who tell them the truth from now on." He nodded, tears filling his eyes. "I promise." Life didn't magically return to normal. Noah needed counseling after years of living with secrets. Ava struggled to understand why her father wasn't coming home. Elena and I slowly learned to work together. Not as rivals, but as two mothers trying to protect the same children from the mistakes of one man. Forgiveness didn't happen overnight. Trust didn't return. But peace slowly did. 1 year later, I stood in my backyard while Noah and Ava laughed together, chasing our old golden retriever through the grass. For the first time, they weren't living in separate worlds. They were simply brother and sister. Cole walked over with 2 cups of coffee. "You finally won your war." I watched the kids playing. Then I smiled softly. "No, I just stopped fighting the wrong enemy." Sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't surviving the battlefield. It's choosing honesty after a lifetime of lies. And that's the legacy I wanted Noah and Ava to remember. Not the betrayal that broke our family, but the truth that finally brought it back together.